What if I told you that the most terrifying prophecy in the Bible isn't about a distant future, but a countdown that may have already begun? 4 ancient, powerful beings, angels of immense power, are described as being chained, not in some mythical underworld, but beneath the very ground we walk on. They aren't waiting aimlessly, they are waiting for a precise hour, a specific day, a divinely appointed month, and an unchangeable year. This isn't a fairy tale, it's a chilling prophecy from the book of Revelation. And the most unsettling part? Their moment of release might not be centuries from now. It could be today. It could be tomorrow. Deep beneath the swirling currents of the Euphrates River, 4 once glorious, now fallen entities are bound by God's own hand. If you want to understand the signs of our times, make sure you subscribe to our channel and join us on this journey. Their crime wasn't a simple act of defiance. They crossed a sacred line that even other demonic forces feared to approach. For millennia, they have been imprisoned, sealed in absolute darkness by divine chains. But imagine the moment those chains finally break. When their appointed time arrives, the world as we know it is destined to transform in ways we can barely comprehend. The book of Revelation 9:14 describes the Apostle John hearing a command from the golden altar before God. The voice isn't a mere suggestion. It carries the full weight of heavenly authority. Release the 4 angels bound at the great river Euphrates. This command triggers a divine judgment, a moment meticulously scheduled on God's prophetic calendar, down to the last second on the celestial clock. What follows is not a subtle shift, but death on a global scale, a third of all humanity gone. But who are these angels? And why would a just God imprison them only to unleash them for such devastation? To grasp this, we have to look deeper than the surface. The Euphrates is more than just a river in the Middle East. It's a spiritual demarcation line. It marked the edge of ancient empires and served as a battleground for divine and demonic forces. Babylon and Assyria, the historical enemies of Israel, both rose from its banks. This river isn't just water and earth. It's a symbolic border between God's covenant and the realms of darkness. And it is precisely at this threshold between the sacred and the profane that these 4 angels are held in waiting. Now, let's be clear, these are not angels of light like Gabriel or Michael. In Scripture, righteous angels are never bound. Chains are reserved for the rebellious, for those who violated God's cosmic law. We are dealing with fallen, corrupted, and malevolently powerful beings. The Apostle Peter confirms this chillingly in his 2nd letter, stating that God did not spare the angels who sinned, but cast them down to hell and delivered them into chains of darkness to be reserved for judgment. Jude echoes this, speaking of angels who abandoned their proper domain and were locked away until the great day. These aren't your everyday demons. They are ancient entities, sealed away precisely because they are too destructive for this world. They weren't just banished, they were contained because their release is not a possibility, but a certainty, a divine act woven into God's plan. Once freed, they are given a singular mission to eliminate a third of humanity. This isn't random chaos, it's coordinated destruction. These beings possess immense power, pinpoint precision, and the terrifying authority of divine permission. So why at that specific moment? Because prophecy doesn't speculate, it unfolds with perfect timing. Some scholars connect these angels to the era of Noah, when celestial beings interfered with humanity, corrupting creation. Others link them to the ancient spirits that guided Babylon's dark idolatry. Ultimately, their origin is less critical than their destiny. Their release signals a shift from divine warning to divine judgment, from an age of grace to one of reckoning. Here is the most crucial point. They are not yet free. They are restrained, awaiting permission not from Satan, but from God himself. This reveals a profound truth. Even the most formidable forces in the spiritual realm are powerless without heaven's consent. The Euphrates isn't just holding back water, it's holding back a torrent of hell. But don't think for a moment this is purely spiritual. When these 4 angels are unleashed, the consequences will be devastatingly real. War, global bloodshed, and a scale of death no nation could ever prepare for. These spirits don't just influence the unseen world, they manipulate the politics and military strategies of our own. That is the measure of their power, and still they wait. In biblical prophecy, the Euphrates has always been more than geography. It is a spiritual dam constructed by God to contain evil until its appointed time. In Revelation 9, that time comes. The boundary shatters, the restraint is removed, and judgment pours forth like a flood that no wall can stop. This leads many to ask, have these angels already been released? The short answer is no, but we are witnessing the shadows, the cracks in the dam, the tremors before the earthquake. The events described in Revelation, plagues, wars, global unrest, are escalating. Some theologians believe these are the birth pangs, not the main event, but it's foreshocks. We are approaching the final act, and the chains at the Euphrates may already be rattling. But let us be clear, God will not permit these angels to act a second too soon. Nothing in this plan is haphazard. Nothing about this judgment is chaotic. Heaven's court is precise, and the timeline is sealed. We are not called to fear these angels. We are called to trust the one who holds the keys to their chains, because when they are released, it will not be by demonic might, but by God's own command. Therefore, our focus should not be on decoding dates or predicting headlines, but on staying spiritually awake, anchored in truth and understanding the times. The Euphrates is still flowing, but its quiet may not last forever. But the question lingers: why does God unleash them at all? If these four beings are so perilous, if their very presence means destruction, why not keep them imprisoned for eternity? Because judgment delayed is not the same as judgment denied. In his mercy, God restrains evil, but he also reveals it. A moment arrives in human history when divine patience reaches its limit and the reckoning commences. The four angels are not set free to create random havoc. They are released to execute a justice long postponed. Their emergence signifies a transition from warning to execution. This isn't merely about punishment. It's about unveiling the true cost of rebellion. God doesn't hide the consequences of evil, he displays them. And sometimes that revelation requires the removal of restraints. When the command is given, what follows isn't chaos, but precision. Revelation says these angels are prepared for an hour, a day, a month, and a year. That isn't vague prophecy, it's surgical timing. Heaven keeps a clock, and every tick moves toward this scheduled release. The impact is unthinkable. Imagine cities crumbling under wars they didn't initiate. Nations turning on each other under a darkness they cannot comprehend. The death toll, 1/3 of humanity, suggests a global cataclysm so swift that no defense can withstand it. This is not just a military conflict, it is spiritual warfare. These beings influence the hearts of men, whisper into the minds of leaders, and stir division until it erupts into bloodshed. And behind them, an army follows, not of men, but of unclean spirits. Revelation describes a mounted force 200 million strong, with an appearance like creatures from a nightmare. Lion-like heads, fire-breathing mouths, and serpentine tails. Whether literal or symbolic, the message is clear. Once the four are freed, the floodgates open, and spiritual warfare becomes a physical apocalypse. But here is the most unnerving aspect. They do not act independently. These terrifyingly ancient angels are still under command. They cannot step beyond the boundaries God permits. That fact alone should transform our view of divine authority. God doesn't just control the light, he also holds back the darkness. And when he allows the darkness to advance, it is never out of control. It is justice with a purpose. Some connect this moment to the Great Tribulation, the final period of chaos before Christ's return. It's a time described throughout Scripture as being filled with distress, unlike anything the world has ever seen. Wars, deception, natural disasters, moral collapse. At its center, the release of these four angels becomes a turning point when the spiritual battle becomes visible. Others argue that we may already be witnessing the signs. The Euphrates River, once mighty, has begun to dry up in places. Geopolitical tensions in the Middle East continue to escalate, and a spiritual darkness seems to be rising like a tide. Are these mere coincidences, or are they precursors? Scripture calls us not to panic, but to discern. These events are not reasons for hysteria, but for clarity. The world will not see them coming, but those who are awake, those who know the word, will recognize the signs. And if you believe these four angels are the only spiritual powers being held back, think again. Scripture speaks of layers upon layers of spiritual conflict, much of it unseen. Principalities, powers, and forces of darkness operating behind governments and social movements. The four angels are just the beginning. In fact, what their chains represent is even more powerful than their freedom. They are undeniable proof that evil is not free to roam. Even in its rebellion, it is limited and contained. That should inspire awe in us, not just fear. The God who can restrain such evil for millennia is the same God who holds our lives. If he can contain this level of malevolence, he can guide you through your darkest night. But there is a warning embedded in this prophecy. Once they are released, there is no going back. That is why the Bible repeatedly urges us to be ready, not just spiritually curious, but spiritually prepared. Their release signifies that the final stage has begun, the countdown has accelerated, and the days of grace are narrowing. The battlefield between light and darkness will spill into plain sight. These angels are not rogue agents acting on behalf of Satan. They are agents of divine wrath, ironically used to bring justice against those who have mocked, denied, or ignored the truth. And that makes their mission even more sobering. Their task is not indiscriminate destruction, it is judgment. A third of humanity perishes not by accident, but because the world has reached a tipping point where rebellion has outweighed mercy. And yet, even in this terrifying moment, God is still calling, still warning, still offering a way out. Revelation is not just about wrath, it's also about redemption. Even as the angels prepare for their release, the door to salvation remains open, but not forever. What these four angels truly represent is the justice of God, the kind we prefer not to think about, the kind that doesn't whisper, but thunders, the kind that doesn't stroke egos, but shatters them. It is the justice that declares a limit to sin, a boundary to corruption, a point of no return. And that justice isn't cruel, it is holy. A world without judgment is a world without hope. If evil is never answered, then goodness has no meaning. If rebellion is never confronted, then righteousness is just an illusion. These angels are the divine response to a world that has closed its ears to grace. Their chains, held for so long beneath the Euphrates, are reminders of God's patience, millennia of waiting, holding back, giving humanity time. And yet, when they rise, the patience will have finally reached its end. So where does that leave us? It leaves us here, in the in-between, between the sounding of the sixth trumpet and the silence before the storm, in the days of preparation before the release. These are not times for spiritual slumber. These are times to seek, to anchor ourselves in truth and to pray. Because when those chains fall, it will not be subtle. The Euphrates will no longer be a dividing line. The boundary will vanish, and the world will learn what it means for judgment to walk the earth. The chains are rattling now. Can you feel it? The tension in the world, the unrest, the sense that something is profoundly wrong, as if the earth is holding its breath. Wars rage without clear cause, alliances form and then crumble, and morality spirals into confusion. This is not just politics or history, it's the spiritual realm pressing in on the physical, tightening its grip. When the four angels are finally released, it will be more than an act of destruction. It will be a declaration. The age of warnings will be over. God will no longer whisper through grace, but will roar through judgment. The Euphrates, once a dividing line, will become a floodgate. These beings, chained for centuries, will ride with a purpose, and they will not miss. They will lead an army of deception, not just with brute force, but with influence, ideas, and lies, so cunning they blur the line between truth and delusion. These spirits will infect politics, economics, and society until the world marches to a rhythm not of heaven, but of hell. But even as they carry out this terrifying mission, they serve a higher purpose, for the sovereignty of God is never broken. These beings do nothing unless permitted. Their very existence, their imprisonment, and their release are all contained within the will of the Almighty. Even evil must bend its knee when God speaks. That is why the chains didn't rust. They weren't forgotten. They were timed. The moment these angels are unleashed, humanity will be forced to choose. There will be no more neutrality, no more hiding behind religion, tradition, or silence. Their release is not just an act of wrath, it's a final fork in the road, and every soul will have to walk one path or the other. Scripture says their task is to kill a third of mankind. That number isn't arbitrary, it's divine precision. It represents not just physical death, but a spiritual division. The separation of the sheep from the goats, the wheat from the tares. When the line is drawn, it will cut deep. And yet, even in the shadow of this terrifying prophecy, there is hope. Because before the angels rise, God raises his voice. Before the chains fall, the Spirit still calls. That is where we are right now, in the mercy gap, the pause between prophecy and its fulfillment. And this window is still open. The greatest mistake anyone can make is to see this as mere poetry or apocalyptic theater. These are not metaphors to inspire art. They are truths designed to prepare souls. So how do we live in the face of something so cosmic? Not with fear, but with a holy fire of urgency. We must pray as we've never prayed before. We must study the scriptures not for pride, but for survival. We cannot afford to play with faith. We must hold it like a sword. Because when these angels rise, the lukewarm will be swept away. Their release signals the beginning of the final season of Earth's history, and everything will escalate. Every spiritual battle will intensify, every hidden idol will be exposed, and every person will have to decide, do I belong to the kingdom of light, or will I be consumed by the darkness? Their chains are still intact for now. But the day is coming when they will no longer hold. When that hour strikes, the world will not be ready, but you can be. After hearing all this, a question remains that we must all consider. It's clear these events are meant as both a judgment and a warning. What are some of the chains you see in the world today that might be holding back chaos, and what do you think will happen when they break? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's discuss and discern these times together.